All right, cool. So I'm back. I'm still at the courthouse. I'm still reporting. All kinds of crazy people out here trying to talk to me. I ain't gonna lie, it's getting weird. But you know what I'm saying? We can't be perturbed. We at the courthouse still. We out here. We doing our thing outside. And basically, I'm about to tell you the craziest part of this whole hearing day, okay? I'm gonna just hand my camera over to my trusty homeboy here. And I'm basically about to tell you the craziest shit, all right? The thing that I'm about to tell you is absolutely wild. You might have already seen this on my Instagram, okay? But it just came out that apparently 6ix9ine and Wack 100 were brought up in the courtroom today. Now, before anyone gets onto it, I'm not saying they're snitching, I'm not saying they're informing, I'm not saying they're part of the case or the prosecution of any sort. But what I am saying is that the prosecution brought up a podcast clip of 6ix9ine and Wack 100 together. I'm pretty sure, I haven't looked it up yet, but I'm assuming if I know the case very well, it's that old clip of Wack 100 and 6ix9ine where they do a podcast. I'm pretty sure they did it in Fresh and Fit's old studio. The first time them two sat down, you remember when 6ix9ine talking about hang? Like, that was a crazy podcast, I'm not gonna lie. That was like a hip hop history moment. But basically, okay, after, like, that interview had a lot of disrespect towards Lil Durk. It had a lot of people talking about, like, you know, why isn't he gonna slide for Von? And if I die, I'm boosting a murder rate, my dudes are gonna slide every day. 6ix9ine was relentless in dissing Lil Durk constantly, telling him to slide for Von. So they basically said, we want to put in evidence number 170, a podcast clip of 6ix9ine interview with Wack 100. They said them names. I'm not lying to you, all right? If I'm lying, I'm flying. And the judge said, all right, how's this hearsay? How could it be prejudicial? The defense basically said, look, this podcast, it's not probative, it's prejudicial. They're saying participating witness 2 mentioned that Durk had apparently seen this, but it was actually participating witness 2 who saw it. He said that he just assumed that Lil Durk saw it, and it's not really that relevant. Now, the prosecution said, look, PW2 is going to testify that this is the podcast that blew up Slide4Von. So the prosecution are saying that the witness, number 2, that is testifying and switching on Durk, is going to testify that it was 6ix9ine and Wack 100 in that podcast that blew up Slide4Von and basically made Durk so livid that he felt like he had to slide. I'm not gonna lie, I've said it before, I said that 6ix9ine tricked Durk out of his position. Slide4Von was a 6ix9ine movement, all right? And now they're saying Wack 100 gave him the assist, okay? I'm not saying they're involved, not saying they're giving statements, none of that stuff before you get onto me, all right? I don't want to get, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get in no trouble with nobody. But the feds are saying that Durk's people were basically talking about how upset Durk was about this podcast and how that actually got him to Slide4Von. You could argue that 6ix9ine is actually part of the reason that they slid for Von. You can't even, like, that's what the prosecution is saying. It's in black and white in the courtroom. That's what is being said. I cannot believe it. That blew my mind. So apparently, okay, they're saying that, look, everyone saw it, all right? It was incredibly relevant. These aren't just trolls. These are real famous people in the industry that were trolling Durk, making a big problem for Durk. And the judge says, look, the prior rulings that I've made allows this to be admitted, all right? They said that it can be assumed that Durk saw this interview or was at least aware of it, and they knew that this was part of the conversation at the time. The defense said, look, as far as 206, there was a conversation between an unindicted co-conspirator and another person who's not part of the case. And they start talking about co-conspirator number 4, right? They're saying, the judge basically says, witnesses say that co-conspirator 4 was the person who got Quando's location. He attempted to get Quando's location right after Von died. I don't know who Coco number 4 is. I don't know, there's some theories, but I don't know who that is. But basically, the defense said, look, these people aren't expected to testify. So whoever you guys think Coco number 4 is, I know there's rumors, all right? They said it black and white, all right? So I ain't gonna say who people think it is, all right? Because I wanna be careful. But they're saying whoever that is, whoever it is, they're not expected to testify. So all of this talk of certain people telling, being, that's not happening, all right? They're not expected to testify. They did say that co-conspirator 4 immediately tried to get Quando Rondo's address right after the death of Von happened. And the judge basically said, cool, that podcast is admitted. So the Wack 100 6ix9ine podcast is gonna be included. But then beyond that, they talked about co-conspirator 4 and Lil Durk having messages back and forth. Whoever Coco number 4 was, they was locked in with Durk. And they said, look, these messages, number 208, the defense said, look, these don't contain much, it's not relevant. Coco 4, whoever that is, and messages with Durk, it's not relevant, it's not important. Let me get my drink real quick. Right? It's not important, it's not relevant. And basically the prosecution said, well, no, after Lil Pab's death, all of the co-conspirators, including like prior text with Durk, they basically said that they all got texts about the murder. Other co-conspirators were mocking Quando, Rondo, and Lil Pab after it happened. They're saying that Durk texted co-conspirator number 4 and Durk participated in the mocking. Now, I'm assuming this is all the no chat. We don't know what was said, but the prosecution is saying Durk participated in the mocking and people were saying no, and apparently Coco number 4 liked that message that was saying no and laughed about it, right? Don't know who that is. We're going to find out. We're definitely going to find out who it is, and soon, to be honest with you guys. So that's going to be explosive. I'm not going to lie. I hope it's not who they say it is. That's all I'm going to say. All right, but we're going to see. We're going to find out. I've heard all sorts of different rumors. So after that, we heard that basically, like, Coco number 4, he was laughing about what happened to Lil Pab and Taekwondo Rondo. They said that the date of these messages, mocking them and saying no, they were in the early morning hours of the 20th August. So the early morning hours right after the murder happened. Coco number 4, whoever that is in text messages with Durk, laughing about it, basically like bragging and like happy that he lined the shit up. That's crazy. So after that, okay, there was a discussion of evidence number 209. And this was apparently a lengthy text chain between other unindicted co-conspirators and others. And this basically was talking about apparently rent money. They were trying to argue, the defense were trying to argue this could have been drug dealing, but it sounds like Lil Durk was paying the rent for some of these OTF members, and the prosecution said, look, this is critical evidence. Weeks after King Von died, Lil Durk says that he won't be partying for New Year's Eve. And this was weird. So I might have misheard this. If I misheard this, I'm sorry, but I wrote this down and I had to like check myself, and I was like, wait, did I really just hear what I think I heard? It sounded to me like they said that Durk sent in a message saying he's not partying for New Year's because Youngboy and them shorties, and the government seemed to suggest that that was in reference to like Quando and his friends. I wrote down YB. I don't know if they were saying a young boy, I don't know, but he said YB and them shorties are out partying every night. Now that's weird because I would have thought, I'm pretty sure that Youngboy was locked up at this point in time, because I'm pretty sure Youngboy actually got locked up before King Von got killed. There was never any big trolling from Youngboy about King Von's death because he got locked up on a separate gun charge in September. So I'm pretty sure Youngboy was already locked up on his gun case when King Von got killed, and that was a separate thing in November with Quando Rondo, because I know about this case very extensively. So that's a little bit weird. So after that, right, we kind of heard all this talk about Durk basically saying that he's cutting off money until members of OTF slide. They said that the participating witness will explain the terminology. The judge said, all right, cool, I'm going to take that under submission. He didn't rule. After that, the defense talked about Article 210. This was a conversation about an apparent ATF raid on a trap house. And they said that, look, this is about drug dealing. It's not about murder. The ATF raid, Alcohol, Firearms, Tobacco Bureau, it wasn't necessarily about the murder. The prosecution said, well, actually, Jam was cooperating at this point, and he gave the info that led to that house being raided. And they said Durk was suspicious and told the group to delete the thread. I'm pretty sure, they didn't say specifically, but that could be the one where they're talking about blood ready to tell, clear as day. We need to delete the messages, we need to delete the chats, all that kind of stuff. And they basically said, delete the chat, delete the iCloud backup too, which is obviously very incriminating. I mean, Durk famously rapped, delete my iCloud if the feds say that they on me though. He said that, all right? So the judge basically said, look, if Durk said the same thing due to drug dealing, delete the iCloud messages, how is it any different? And the judge actually made quite a good point in Durk's favor here. They said, look, you could say delete the iCloud messages if you were having a civil lawsuit or a civil dispute with someone and you wanted to hide evidence. Now, sure, that would be unethical and wrong, but at the same time, if you was having a civil lawsuit about some money and you said, yo, delete the messages and delete the iCloud to cover it up, that's not necessarily proof of murder on its own. Now, the prosecution clapped back and they said, look, the cops asked them about OTF, the nickname Blood, location that was raided being linked to that participating witness, and the co-conspirators were worried about a person involved in the murder cooperating. Now, it wasn't the best reply, but I do think that it was pretty interesting because it was the feds basically saying, well, look, Jam gave us the info for the raid. They didn't say this, but it's almost like they inferred, like, look, if they was drug dealing, cool, but Jam's participating to try and hush up his involvement in the murder, and if he told on them for the trap house and they worked out that he was telling about all the stuff he involved in, including the murder, but they didn't say that. But anyway, that's what I'm inferring. So after that, they said that the co-conspirators were worried about a person involved in the murder. Cool, I already told you that. So they said if the defendant wants to say that it's all about drug dealing, they can. They're saying that this drug thing can be kind of can be put to the jury, and basically like it's like a whole thing. So after that, Didi's lawyer then spoke about numbers 164 and 165, those pieces of evidence, and they basically said, look, I reserve the right to speak about this overall gang argument. We've been going back and forth about this, and they're not supposed to be going over the gang thing. But they're saying, look, here in evidence 165, they said the government are getting in lyrics that are referring to Didi as the nickname threat. They didn't like that. They said in 164, the government hasn't met the relevancy test. They said it's I think it said it's a dislocated interpretation. He said the IG live video, and basically they were saying that there was an IG live video where Didi referred to himself as the murder man, and they were trying to say, look, this is prejudicial. He was referring to comments that were calling calling him the murder man. They're saying that the government never said that Didi shot anyone. Didi didn't admit that he was a shooter. Didi wasn't on there talking about shootings that he had done. Didi wasn't a shooter in the situation. And then the judge basically said, well, look, Didi talking about being a murder man from the comments, how does that not refer to Pab's murder? Does that not refer to the murder? And they said, are the government misinterpreting what's in the video? What's going on? And then Didi's lawyer said, well, they didn't give any transcripts. They just gave a summary. They said it was probative. They said in the video he's wearing that V-Roy chain. And this was a few months before the murder. But obviously Didi's been accused of other murders, right? They said, so it shows, the prosecution said, look, it shows connections to Tay-Town and OTF and all the gangs. It shows that he was connected to King Von with the V-Roy chain. And it basically said that they can argue that he's not referring to Lil Pab's murder since it took place. Actually, this didn't make sense, my bad. They said that he was wearing the V-Roy chain a few months before the murder, so that shows the intent, and then they can argue that he's not referring to Lil Pab's murder that took place a few weeks before, but he was taking credit for Lil Pab's death. So what they basically seemed to say, unless I got this wrong, was that Didi basically admitted, like he was on a live and he acknowledged people calling him the murder man in the comments, and basically they were saying that that was a few months after Pab had been murdered, and they're saying that he doesn't need to say that he was the shooter, but he's basically taking credit for the death, being like, yeah, I'm the murder man, I helped set up the play. So that was that. So look, I'm gonna move on to another section now. I'm going to break down the rest of this in another video or two, but there's just quite a lot going on here, so I'm honestly like getting a little bit frazzled now, so I might go and record the last couple of bits of this at home, but basically that's kind of like, yeah, the Wack 100 6ix9ine thing's the craziest thing. Didi referring to himself as the murder man is a little bit mad as well. I wonder if I'll be able to find that IG live video. I will let you guys know if I do, but for now, I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm probably gonna do 2 more videos about this, so stay tuned for that, and I will speak to you guys soon. Peace.